Today, we are going to be having the privilege of interviewing some of the survivors that also shared their stories in the documentary. We are going to have with us, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but first, we're going to have with us Robin. Robin, if you can go ahead and come on and introduce yourself. Hey, 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 how are you? Thank you, first of all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you. And I'm Gabriella. Nice to
Hi,
meet you.
Gabriella. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. Yeah.
Of course. How are you feeling tonight? How are you feeling tonight?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I think this sort of weather is back to our normal, so I'm feeling a lot better. Feeling a lot better.
Great, great. Thank you again for joining us. So today, as everything's getting settled, I believe my co-host Aleesha may be coming to join us in a little bit. But I wanted to ask you a few questions just about your time being on the documentary of surviving Poland's life after a massacre. I wanted to just first, if you could just share a little details about that, how your journey was and your experience during that time of
Um,
shooting.
okay, of the shooting of the documentary.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, so that was it was very emotional. Even it was a bittersweet moment because when we initially started the shooting, the filming. I'm sorry, uh, the filming. Some of us hadn't seen each other since some of the tragedy of Pulse. So it was bittersweet moments. It was frustrating. Um, it was loving, frustrating, and just all of those highs and lows. But it was a wonderful experience. And Nancy and Aleesha are some of the most kindest people that you've ever met, and they made all those moments us for us to be okay, for us to be however we were, angry, whatever it was. They made those moments okay, and they were
Right.
always there to support us. Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now that you share part of your story, how is that feeling just being able to share your story about something that was so traumatic and that wasn't really shared with the world, that the world didn't know about? How did that feel for you?
So it was great, and so I always have to want to clarify that I actually was a voice of those who were impacted then and thereafter.
Yeah.
I was not at the club when it happened. However, I worked at a neighboring club, which now I can say I worked at the Parliament House in security. Um, and so my role has always been that, to try to support and amplify those voices that weren't heard, those that were left out of the narrative. So my oh my God, really find it. So yeah.
Just sharing a snippet of your piece in the documentary, your trailer.
Black people, it's faced daily. But I think it's very important, even this COVID experience, that we always be intentional and very aggressive about capturing the voices that have been left out, because it will be intentionally left out to create a narrative that's not so. And that was one of our main fights with this Pulse tragedy, was that initially the black voice was silenced, and then it almost created this divisiveness between blacks and Latins. And we still see that sometimes under the control of colonialism and imperialism. And so what we want to do, and for me, the things that I do now, I want to make sure that those voices, those lost voices, are always centered.
Nice, nice. Okay, sorry for the interruption for what you were saying, but it sounds like you were kind of bouncing off of just that trailer as well. And so, do you feel that at least what you shared, then, especially if you've seen the film as well, I don't know if you have, but
Mhm.
do you think that the film showcased that and amplifying the voices that weren't heard?
Yeah, we there were certain directions that the director, Nancy and Alexa, were going. So we amplified as much as we could in this first piece, and I think that getting those stories out by those who were impacted. I think they did a wonderful job in doing so. There's still more, and but where we are right now, I think that 5 years, but okay, I think people are starting to get um, to get what we were trying to say.
Right. Okay, good, good. That's great to see that. And I wanted to know, I had asked the ladies before as well, and I wanted to ask you, get your input. Is there any recommendations that you would have for people who do consider themselves allied to help out even more, to advocate and help out those voices that were unheard, such as maybe even promoting the documentary when it's ready? Is there
Yep.
anything else we could do?
Yeah. So there's always funding. Nancy, she did this literally from pocket, so to speak, and I had no knowledge of this until I started to ask questions because there was a point where we're like, well, where is this? Because we
Mhm.
didn't know what all it means to promote or produce or any of those things, but all it's the production of a movie, and so there's is everything. There's always a financial burden that's taken, and so I think supporting because when you support this work, you're also supporting the victims in a sense. And what I appreciate is because some of our most impacted victims that you'll see in the documentary, they were left out of some of the financial, we'll say, giveaways. And so, with that being said, making sure, as I said before, is that those who are really impacted, that they are centered and that they are financially taken care of. And there
Mm.
was there's still opportunity for that, and I think that's what even what Aleesha would recommend is that we're still centering those needs.
Yes, yes, and clearly one of those needs is a financial need. Would you be able to go a little deeper and share some more on the financial giveaways that you said?
Well, time has passed, so there's some numbers that I don't remember, but there were, we'll say, and if I can be kind of candid, those were some star victims that did receive financial payouts after the event, and but then then there were some that weren't compensated properly, or just as some of the star, we'll call them the star witnesses or star players, and so that was one thing that led us. We'll say Keon Carter, who's special and dear to my heart. He was
Mhm.
racking up so many costs, medical costs. And there was one time where he called myself and Charlotte Davis, who's been a great voice and activist in this whole issue. He called us to come over to his house to show us a bill of, I think it was somewhere like 80 grand, like due now, from the
No.
hospital. And so we were just like, we were outraged. So we went to Facebook, we went to every platform we could and just shamed them into into getting rid of it, because that's what they said they were going to do anyway, because he was a victim. He didn't, this was nothing of his own accord. And so
Right.
we wanted to be sure that he wasn't the one that's going to pay that, but that the state or would pay for it. There's Aleesha talking.
Still a struggle.
Kind of, pretty much scarred me for life. I got
Here's Keenan.
um, injuries up and down my stomach. I was shot directly in my abdomen. Um, the shooter shot out my small intestines, my kidneys, my sacrum, split my pelvis. Um, Being that the gun went through all day, it caused a little infection in my derriere, so it inflamed, and they had to fix that. So I was dealing with that situation, dealing with all that on top of that, as well as being on dialysis. So it's like I'm still, pretty much fighting for my life, and that was all in like a 2 months time. I'm still healing.
My God. Wow. And so he just shared some of just the healing process and the medical treatment that he has to go through. And you're sharing that he had to pay for all that. He was being requested to pay for all of that treatment. Wow.
Yeah, and so we just went to social media and just tried to bring shame. We didn't know what else to do, and
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was that shame to the hospitals, or you
yes,
mentioned the
to
state,
the
the
to the
government?
hospital, and there's so many, and that would actually require probably another conversation. I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead, but yeah, to the hospital because national TV they said that um, these survivors would not be would not be expected to pay, and there he was trying to figure out how he was going to do this, and
Right.
just other needs that he had, and and there are more stories, but just so happened that we were closer to him, and he
Mhm.
reached out, and this is just to see this. It was just, can you imagine getting a bill? It's 80, we'll just say 86,000 due now, you know,
Do now, like,
right now. So
I can
yeah,
imagine, and as you're
yeah,
still recovering and just processing the surgery
mhm,
you just came out of, and to be
exactly.
confronted with this bill
And,
after
and
the mental trauma, I mean,
right.
it's just right.
And
It's
he's
just
still having surgeries. This hasn't stopped. He's still having surgeries. I don't know
5 years.
what number he's on now, but it's I think in that clip he says 30 something. There's been more, and there probably will be more. It's still a process for him.
Wow, yeah, yeah, it's definitely a process.
Yeah.
I wanted to also get into, so you mentioned that you're happy that voices are being heard and awareness is being raised. Have you seen any particular specific outcomes? I know because we're still waiting on the documentary to be officially released. And right now we are just raising the awareness of the documentary. But what other outcomes or advocacy or awareness have you seen due to just the process of filming this documentary?
Yeah. I did kind of, for my own emotional reasons, I kind of stepped back some,
Yeah.
but I'm always available if needed. However, um, there are some things that I think that did happen for Keon and others, maybe not to the level that we would have or capacity that we would like to see, but there have been uh, things that have been done to make things somewhat easier. Um, just I think recognizing that there was some failures. That's some progress because I think for me the arrogance from Orlando is still does not sit well with me, and that's probably another area that I hope that we will get to advocate for because there was some balls dropped on that night that for the shooting to take place, and sometimes that's another story. But um, but there are some things that have been done to make things a little easier for those who did survive.
Would you mind going into detail or just sharing few examples of what has been done to help those that have survived?
I think, and I feel a little uncomfortable, but I'll say that I think
Oh,
that there have been folks that have reached out to Keon to kind of help him to assist him in some of his goals because he's a guy that he's young, he's vibrant, he wants to have his own business. So I think there were some efforts made toward that, and so I'm grateful for that, and maybe some other slightly medical issues or things to help compensate or deflate some of the costs. I think some of those were done.
that's nice. Okay, so it sounds like community is being raised in a sense to
Yes,
help
yes.
one another. That's incredible. That's incredible. Alicia, thank you so much for coming on in. Here we're interviewing Robin, and Robin is just
Hey,
sharing
Alicia.
their experience for shooting the film and documentary. Alicia, I wanted you to come on in I know last week, the producer, editor, and director, they all shared how you had such a big role in gathering all the voices that shared their stories on the documentary Surviving Pulse Life After a Mass Shooting. So, would you be able to just share your experience about that and how you went about gathering all the people and all the survivors? How did that happen?
Well, first of all, good evening,
Good
everybody,
evening.
and hello, Robin.
Hey.
How did I get involved in this process? Let's see. Well, we have another person that's in the documentary. Her name is Cha Cha, also known as Charlotte Davis. And I've known Charlotte for several years. I'll call her Cha Cha because we all know her as Cha Cha. And Cha Cha was actually online one night, and I was sleeping as usual. I'm always sleeping, and my phone kept going off. So I decided to go online to find out who in the world was causing all of these notifications. So it turns out Cha Cha was on there, and she was talking about Keon and how she was upset that he hadn't received any help. I had never heard of Keon. I had never heard of Robin or any of these other people. And Cha Cha and myself, I told her, give me a call. So she called me. We started talking about, what was going on. And I'm a person that for a very long time was known in the LGBTQ community in Orlando. And I basically talked to her about what was happening and the fact that the survivors that she knew of were not receiving any type of help. And I told her, I said, the main thing that you need to do is to get you need to get like a producer or a director, somebody that's going to tell your story and tell your side of the story, and all of your friends and all of those involved. And at the time, she said she didn't know anyone that could help. And I work in the entertainment industry. I model and I act. And so I decided I was going to reach out to whomever I knew to try to help them. And once
Mhm.
I heard the stories, they were so compelling. It just got to the point where I said, I have to do something to try to help. So I jumped in, I contacted Nancy, and from there, everything started from there. And after that, we began filming probably about a month or two later. And it's been 5 years, labor of love, and we're still fighting for these guys.
Awesome. Awesome. That's incredible. That is a way to use your resources and your platform essentially to raise awareness for the greater good. So thank you for that. And that really ties into everything that Robin was sharing. And Robin, I'm sorry, I apologize, excuse me, but my pronouns are she, her, and they, and them. And I just wanted to make sure I got yours correct as well. So is it okay if I ask you what your pronouns are?
Yes, I thought that I posted them, but I'm not always tech savvy. She, her, they.
She, her, they, awesome. And so Robin was sharing her experience and everything with Keenan and everything that you just shared too, with having this traumatic experience happen and the newscaster sharing that, the bills are going to be covered. But here we have the actual victims and they're being presented with $80,000 of bills to pay medical bills, and no one knows about that. And so, thank you, Aleesha, as well, and Robin, to just utilizing your platforms and your resources to raise awareness. And a really great shout out to you, Aleesha, for contacting Nancy, who got the director and editor together, and everyone just joining together to gather other survivors to share their stories, as well as you, Cha Cha, Charlotte. I wish we could have had you here as well. Thank you to you. And I believe that would wrap up our interview talking about the film. Robin, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your intake and all the ways that you helped raise awareness for the film. Are there any more lasting remarks that you wanted to share before we go?
Yeah, sure. So there's so much that could be said, and so these types of tragedies happen, and it bordered areas that's mostly impacted. So and we need people to speak on our behalf. And so what I want to do is I'm running for office next year for state representative, because I believe that we need legislation that creates freedom for all those of us who are impacted in a negative way. So my name is Robin Harris, and so I hope that you can remember me, and I need your positive energy and support. Thank you. Thanks, Aleesha.
You're welcome. And Robin, what district are you running in?
District 46, and it's being chopped and blocked off right now. This is an unusual year. But it's District 46, which is mostly the Pine Hills, Orla Vista, Metro West area. But we'll know more next year what that's going to look like.
All right, sounds good.
Incredible. Great luck to you, Robin. You can do this. You got this. And
Thank you.
also, if you are able to remain for just the last 3 minutes, Aleesha, I apologize, but did you have any other remarks as well for Robin, or any other questions?
Robin, I know we've been working on this for 5 years and it's been a labor of love, but I wanted to know what has changed from the time that we started filming till now, and what would you like to see changed?
Yeah, well, I have a better understanding, of what the process looks like. So, I think it's more patience, and we need support. As I kind of like started off saying, this project takes finances. And so Nancy and Alexa could definitely use that. And as much publicity as this documentary can get, I think it still needs it because it's so important. I would encourage everyone that can to take a look at it. It changes. Every time I look at it, I still tear up. So it's very emotional because it's real. And so if that could be some kind of way, if that could be broadened and viewed more, I think that would be helpful for us.
Amen to that. Well, thank you again so much, Robin. Thank you so much for joining us in for this interview. You all heard it here. Please tune in to Surviving Pole's Life After a Mass Shooting. The documentary will be out soon. Check it out. Thank you. Thank you.
Pulse was always that club that felt home away from home, and no one was going to judge you, and you could be anything at Pulse.
Place where you can just go and have fun and just kick it, just lay back and, just hang out.
I used to describe Pulse as my home. Friday comes, I'm like, God, Pulse the next day. We gotta go.
It just felt like family. It felt like family.
At 2:02 a.m., the gunman begins his roughly 30-minute rampage.
Look at that, just shooting back and forth.
Exchanging fire with police twice before barricading himself in a bathroom, taking hostages. The shooting rampage left 50 people dead, including the gunman.
I was shot in my leg.
And that's when people start screaming. This girl right next to me, she had blood all over her. I don't know who she was. We were like crawling out. We crawled all the way to the street.
So I told my friend, I was like, we can't stay in here. I just feel like we're gonna die in here.
I laid on the floor, hearing this guy coming closer and closer, just shooting people and shooting people.
No shooting, no shooting, no shooting.
I have to be honest with you. Your brother didn't make it.